Banjo-Kazooie was one of my favourite games as a kid. Okay, that's not quite true. Growing up, it was terrifying. The way the level transitioned into that fucking painting, it scared the shit out of me. This giant head just looking at you. And that happens again! Oh, the music that plays when you're in the water and the fucking shark starts chasing you. It still makes me tense up thinking about it. The sea mine with eyes that hated you so much he would go for you and explode and die just to take a single honeycomb off your life bar gave me actual nightmares as a kid. I'm not even joking. Banjo-Kazooie ruined my life. Tons of people remember the quiz section at the end of Banjo-Kazooie as being kind of unfair, but really importantly, tons of people remember the quiz, which is more than can be said for any section of any of the old platforming collectathons of the time. Do you even remember Tonic Trouble, or Bomberman Hero, or that shite-ass Earthworm Jim game that came out that was 3D? Does anyone remember Gex, Enter the Gecko?
Let's get it on! It's tail time! It's tail time! It's tail time! It's tail time!
What?
It's tail time! I know what you're thinking. It's tail time.
I'm gonna need an explanation for this. We can't go on like this. This is madness. Flash forward to 2017. It's been a really long time since these games came out, and almost as long as the 3D platformer was really in fashion, with basically only Mario as the last man standing with this kind of gameplay, outside of course of indie stuff. One such piece of indie stuff is Yooka-Laylee, created by Playtonic Games, composed of folks who left Rareware after seemingly getting sick of working under Microsoft making Kinect sports games and putting out ports of their good stuff. Yooka-Laylee is in a really difficult and weird place. In going after a genre of game that was seemingly outgrown well over a decade ago, is bringing back these mechanics and systems really enough? Or are there ways to adapt the formula to a modern setting and make it better than it was even back in the day, like Doom recently did for its originals? And what the fuck does "it's tail time" mean? What the fuck does it mean? Does the lizard fuck Rob Cohen, lead writer of Gex, Enter the fucking Gecko? Does the lizard fuck? Why would you do this, Robert? Why would you do this? I had a really good time with Yooka-Laylee. Eat me to regain your Oh, God! Oh, Jesus Christ! The controls are incredible. The basic walk feels fast enough to get you where you want to go, as opposed to the originals where you would end up always using the talent trot. The game's version of the trot uses energy now, but it does this because it's now even faster and controls very differently from just a standard run. You have something of a turning radius. Getting good at using it just feels good. The game makes mobility itself create a good feeling in a way I haven't seen in quite a long time. There's so much charm to almost every little thing. There's so much variety to the character designs and their personalities in a way that completely fits the original. There's a bunch of snowmen in the snow level, and one of them dresses like Gruntilda used to and talks in rhymes. There are cute puns in all the names all over the place. I especially like the Scion who confuses you for a gardener or redecorator every level, and he's called like Planker. And then there's little things too, like the noises Laylee makes when you're doing the roll move. It's beautiful. It's just cute. The story's kind of cool. You can really feel the seething hatred for the time the creators spent working under Microsoft. The villain is a giant corporation run by Capital B. Do you get it? Do you understand the Capital B's company, Ivory Towers, has built a giant sucking machine. Much like Microsoft. And it stole Yooka and Laylee's book. To get it back, they have to infiltrate Ivory Towers to find and collect all the pages that fell out of it. It's a pretty classic and simple setup, but it works, and I enjoy the massive jabs at corporate structure that it takes. I didn't expect that. When I see Trouser, the snake, I wonder how many years they waited to make that joke. Like, I imagine him being on the cutting room floor of Conker or something, and they were like, one day we'll make the greatest anthropomorphic dick joke ever in the sequel if we ever get one. And now, 32 years later, here he is! Kirkhope, Wise, and Burke have done a fantastic job of blending the modern capabilities of game soundtracks with the sensibilities that made their work on the older games consoles so special in the first place. While it never feels like it does something truly beyond what the originals could do, it feels like it's doing the sort of thing the originals would have done if they'd had the chance. The creators patched out audiobook salesman and white nationalist Jontron's dialogue from the game, which is a shame, because if there's one thing Jontron is good at, it's making meaningless, incoherent noise into a microphone. It must suck to discover that your favourite guys have been infected by communism. The game is ultra faithful to the design spec of the works it's throwing back to. But the thing about this faithfulness is that it means all the problems I had with the previous games, all the glaring issues that are even more clear in retrospect, are still present all this time later. People who don't like the original games going back to them without nostalgia, or who never really got them at the time, will not get Yooka-Laylee either. It's another one of those games, good and bad.
However, there are some things about Yooka-Laylee that are really interesting. In faithfully recreating a dead genre, it resurrects gameplay elements that were fun or good or useful but got lost in the mists of time. So I thought I'd explore some of the elements that might be worth keeping around and reincorporating back into modern design.
Take, for example, the level transitions. The originals needed a transition because you literally couldn't fit that much of a level in data. A standard trick in game development at the time was to have the inside and outside be two separate areas entirely with a loading zone between them, or put a zone between two sections of the same area when it can be justified.
In Banjo-Tooie, the sequel,
this makes the ascent up the Isle o' Hags even more impressive because the developers are successfully simulating climbing a giant mountain with numerous quite small areas where modern games could just put the whole mountain there and have you climb it. Yooka-Laylee is made in an era where you don't really need loading screens. Modern consoles and PCs have much more memory and processing power, and using strategic loading and unloading, you can have an entire seamless world with careful loading between maps without ever having to actually stop. But Yooka-Laylee still has these transitions. This shortcut to the top of a mountain is a transition when both pieces of the game world are physically there, and nothing really needs to be loaded in and out. This passage leads inside the mountain into a relatively small area you could have just modelled inside the mountain and had you walk inside. This design sensibility is throughout the game, but the thing is, this isn't just reusing antiquated solutions to problems that don't exist anymore. This kind of level design still has a kind of value of its own. You could have a passage inside the mouth of this cave leading all the way up to the top, but then this shortcut would be significantly longer, wouldn't it? You would have to physically climb or walk or wait in an elevator. The teleportation of sorts you get from having it just be a dark cave you walk into and come out at the top is a really convenient time saver, something you want from a shortcut. Keep notes, From Software! Something this era of games always did very well was lie to you. You went into a building, and it was bigger on the inside. Was this a mistake? An accident? Did someone fuck up on the blueprints? No. They did it because they thought it was better that way. They didn't have to be constrained by what the outside of the building looked like, because you were in a different map, ruled by different constraints. The world of Banjo-Kazooie was almost a literal cartoon whose shape changed as it was needed to suit the gameplay.
The inside of Duke's Temple is a different shape and size from the outside, something only manageable when both areas are bespoke and separated by a transition.
So even though these design elements were used to avoid limitations of the original hardware, there is a genuine, noticeable advantage in these elements even when those limitations are removed. The other thing these games have is purposefulness in their controls. You are fully responsible for everything the character does. Modern game design seeks to simplify a lot of the experience of controlling a character. This looks really cool, doesn't it? I'm holding forwards. game design.
You run Ezio or Altair or any of the shitty unmemorable characters that came afterwards towards a ledge holding the do cool shit button, and he runs and jumps and climbs all over the shop. This isn't gameplay. Assassin's Creed is almost the closest thing the Collectathon has to a successor, what with all the collecting you're doing. But it's really unengaging because most of the work is done by Altezio for you. You just point him at the thing. The same is true of games like Uncharted or Tomb Raider and so on. These games aren't necessarily bad, but they've moved the simple fun of controlling the character to navigate challenges into the background, and that's not always a good thing. In old platformers, every move was deliberate. You have to keep yourself on a ledge here. It's easy to fall off or miss a jump, and this makes landing the jump correctly satisfying. The supposed simplification of the mechanics of a game has removed some of the more crunchy and interesting and satisfying elements of the actual games. I honestly spent the first couple of hours of Yooka-Laylee feeling flabbergasted that, for the first time in ages, I was pressing a button to jump, and then moving to where I wanted to move, using my own abilities to control the character, instead of pointing them at the thing and letting them do whatever. And also, like when I first replayed Banjo-Kazooie a little while ago, I kept staring at the corner of the screen. I wondered why, but then when I was playing Shady Mordy to get this footage, I realised why. I was looking for the minimap to tell me where to go to do the stuff I was supposed to do. I think one reason the levels in these games are more memorable, literally stick out in your mind so well you could take a quiz about them, is because they're built around leading you around with their design and encouraging a real sense of curiosity about them. It's very rare for any aspect of the landscapes of modern games to really pop out at you, existing as mostly giant empty spaces you navigate with a GPS telling you where all the interesting stuff is already. Making your world interesting to simply explore and look and see and find things for yourself instead of the thing you pass through on the way to the interesting stuff marked on the map is a really good idea which, outside of Yooka-Laylee and Breath of the Wild, is a practice going unfortunately forgotten in many modern game genres. The game itself isn't perfect, even though I really enjoyed it and was capable of looking past the flaws the way I looked past them back in the day. It deliberately embraces many of the trappings and conventions of a genre that probably went away for a reason, but it contains elements of design and execution that can still be learned from. The wealth of design possibilities opened up by placing level design and convenience for the player over physical coherence. The joyful freedom of a simple but nice feeling control scheme that takes skill to master properly. The memorable adventure of exploring a space and scouring it for stuff by yourself without anyone telling you where anything is, having to actually look using ingenuity to find. Consequently forcing you, without even noticing, to memorize the landscape of a location until you can see it in your head when you shut your eyes.
No. No.
And, most importantly, putting eyes on everything. Everything. Everything! Those are just eyes. They walk around and they find stuff to possess, and then it becomes their body. Jesus Christ, even the fucking logo has eyes now. Is everyone alright down there at Playtonic? Do you need help? Can I help you? Perhaps the collectathons of old can't really exist in the modern day without being altered so much they don't really resemble themselves anymore. But within that old style, there lies all kinds of useful little pieces of the jigsaw puzzle of gaming that are worth keeping around. Yooka-Laylee's choices are just another page in the book of game design.
Ha ha